Well, hello, Margaret.
Hiya.
Thanks so much for having us at your lovely farm.
You're welcome.
I always like to start every conversation right from the beginning, so just tell me about growing up.
I was one of 9 children.
Okay.
Born in the East End, just at the tip of the island at Limehouse at home. 6 older than me and 2 younger than me. My father worked in the docks, but he had a very, most of the kids years ago when he grew up in the East End were quite was very impoverished, etc. I was luckier than most because I had 6 older than me that kind of coddled me, if you like. I had a sister who was a brilliant dressmaker, used to make all my clothes, etc. My father was a beast of a man, and I've always told my kids the only father I've had was my eldest brother, who is 93 and still alive, but he was the one that encouraged me at school. He was the one that checked I was okay, and even now I don't think I've still ever smile in front of him, as old as I am. The older ones, they've just started to acknowledge, yeah, she is an adult, she's an old lady, and they've stopped treating me like a child. But it wasn't very nice. When my dad was around, he was a bully, and my mum suffered a lot of domestic violence, and we did as kids. But I look back and I had a really happy childhood, and it's strange, there was that bit that I would dread him coming home, but because I had the love, and when people say it's progression now, we were so poor, but Mum she'd go out early morning office cleaning, she would be there to get us off to school, then she'd go and she'd clean for people down the street who had some money, then get us from school, then she'd go out cleaning, office cleaning overnight. But we always had a hot meal on the table, and although, and I suppose it was always fresh, didn't have fridges, it was always fresh vegetables we had. Not much meat, because couldn't afford that, but we were really loved, and she guided us well, my mum. Wonderful lady. And as I say, my brothers and my siblings, the support and the way they protected me, and even now still do. I've lost 3 sisters and 1 brother, my youngest brother, but the rest of them we might not see one another for weeks and months on end, but if you need somebody, it's there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a mixture of, I was a pretty clever kid, and years ago, before comprehensive schooling, if you passed the scholarship, you was given a chance to go to grammar school, and I went to grammar school. Can't say I enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it. There was a lot of snobbery attached to it. I think in my year there was only about 4 girls from Tower Hamlets that actually went to the school. The rest were professional. But I made some lovely friends there, and I look back now, although I didn't like the snobbery part of it, I'm grateful. I think the education that I got there is what's helped me through life, yeah. That's it. I think when I was at school, that was the grounding for me, where I really felt that inequality. I can remember one day going to school, and I had holes in the bottom of my shoes, and I had a bit of cardboard in, and it was wet, and my shoes started to leak, and you could see it coming on my socks, and I was so ashamed and embarrassed, and I made out I wasn't well, and I went home. And them sort of things make you grounded, and it was something, never resented my mum. She was doing the best she could for us, and that was it, you know, working all hours because my dad just used to spend his money in the pub, and that was it. And again, that was where domestic violence, and so I was so against it when I saw our mum work, but there was no escape for her. She, you know, not like now, women have got choices, but she had no choice.
Yeah.
And we always said there's 9 of us, but he was away in the war, which was fortunate for my mum, because otherwise I'd probably had another 2 or 3 brothers and sisters. So that was it. But I look back and lovely memories of my childhood. Yeah.
Can you tell me about one particular one, like one favourite memory?
My favourite, I was talking the other day, we had an agricultural show here, Harvest Festival, and I was sitting on the fields, they'd all gone to lunch and it was quiet, and I could see the sheep in the background and there was some bales of hay and that, and it took me back when we were kids, working class kids from here, didn't know what holiday was, but we used to go fruit picking and hop picking. Have you heard of that?
No.
Well, they say
Fruit
even
picking,
now,
yes, but
hopping, they call it hopping. They would go to Kent and pick the hops.
Okay,
and
yeah.
They'd live in little, probably places like this, but my husband, he went hopping and that was his happiest memories. Mine was fruit picking, and it was a little place called Wisbeach, just through Cambridge that way. And it was the huts we stopped in, they were built as a German prisoner of war camps.
Oh, okay.
So we were really in luxury because we had running water, we had toilets, and we had showers in there, where most of them it would just be a basic barn that was built and that. But you had your bunks and you had straw palliasses, that was it. But you'd get up in the morning, you'd have a lorry come pick us up, take us on the field to pick, etc. But it was, I suppose it was the freedom being away, and those 6 weeks down there were probably in childhood my happiest memories. And when I sat down on that field, I'm getting quite emotional now, and I said to someone, I felt so calm, and I went back and it was like being down fruit picking again.
Oh.
Yeah, and a few years before he passed, my husband, we went back down there, and I looked at it and nothing had changed. But it was basic, we'd go out of an evening and everyone, you had a communal cookhouse with a big open Aga you would have, and we'd go out and you'd go to, there was potato fields, you'd pick up some potatoes and then you'd go to the orchards and find mushrooms, and then we'd have midnight feast. But everyone was poor, but everyone, and it was lovely. So with my childhood, I always say fruit picking were my happiest memories. Yeah.
I love that. From your childhood and grammar school, what was the way like until you ended up here in 1997?
When I first, it was strange. I decided I was going to leave school, and it was the headmistress actually came around to see my mum, and she said, I think because I was an East End and she knew I was from a poor background, she wanted to encourage me, and she said she would get me a grant to stop on at school, etc. And I agreed, and then I got a job during my school holidays, and he asked me to stop on, and the wage he offered me at the time was phenomenal, and he wanted to teach me all through. And I just never went back to school. It was, I've got this money, I can help Mum, because by now my mum she'd actually found a way that she'd escaped from the clutches of my dad. We'd moved from a 3-storey, 5-bedroomed house into a 2-bedroom flat on a local estate, and there was my young brother had his own bedroom. There was myself, my sister, my 2 sisters and my mum in the other bedroom. But we were so happy, we'd escaped from him. And I got this job, and I wasn't there long. It was something, I mean, if I look at it now, it'd be done for sexual harassment, but it was in a machining firm, and all the machinists was on short time. They used to just work what we call piecework. And they were going home, all the women. Well, I've always been mad on football, and we were playing a World Cup game, and I wanted to go home. And I went and said to the department I was working in, which was where they were cutting all the thing, I said to him about going home, and he said, no, you can stop here. So I said, but I'll be the only woman here. I was a kid of 16. And his response to me was, well, you've got to lose it sometime. And I I won't tell you what I said to him. And I walked out. And it tells you now, I never even told my mum, but I went and got myself a job in Woolworths. And I was in Woolworths for a few days, and it was horrendous. It was horrendous. You had to put your hand up to the toilet, ring a bell. And I had a debate with my younger sister, and to get her hand back on me, she told my mum that I was working in Woolworths. And that is the only time my mum has ever interfered. And she said, no way, you're wasting yourself there. And she took me to an agency, and I got a job. It was up Holborn, cigarette manufacturers, WD&HO Wheels, which were biggest, one of the biggest brands. And I think from there, it was working at the city, completely away from the girls that I'd grown up with, etc. And there was such a diverse range of girls in the office. And again, we had a great time. I think I ended up before I came here as a youth worker, and I think I was a very good youth worker, and the reason was because I'd been there and done it all, so they couldn't hoodwink me. I knew exactly. I think I troubled my mum growing up because she always thought, oh God, what's she going to get up to next? But I met my husband, I met him, I lived next door to him. Didn't like him much, to be honest, when I first knew him, but we were both out of work together. I'd had injury here, and I got to know him and I realised he was completely different to what he portrayed. And got married, and we wanted children right away, and I had my firstborn. We rented a house at Woodford, which is in Essex, and I hated it. I wasn't too bad while I was working, but once I had my son, and I'm terrified of spiders, and this place, we had an outside toilet and the spiders, and I would go up to my mum's for a weekend and I'd stop for 2 months. My son basically spent his first years of his life in a pram in the bedroom with my mum and my sister, and that's how it was. And as I had my kids and I become, I always wanted 6 children. I ended up with 5. And I had the children, and then as I got older, I decided I wanted to go back to work. And I'd been a mum, I'd been a wife, I wanted to be a woman again. I wanted my own, to do my own thing.
Yeah.
And when my daughter was born, I had the 4 boys, and then I had Laura. And of course, by then I'd really wanted a girl, but it was strange. From the minute she was born, there was something I knew not right. And it turned out that I had postnatal depression. I'd never had it with the boys, but it was so awful, and it was feeling, I can still see myself wincing as she woke up. I would feed her, put her down, that was it. I felt so guilty about it. I wouldn't tell anyone, It was dreadful. And I became so ill, I couldn't even feed my children. It was like having morning sickness all the time. My mum used to take them around her house, and she kept me alive, Mum, with Complan it was, she kept me alive on. That's all I lived on. And it was a locum doctor who eventually discovered, who put 2 and 2 together, and it was postnatal depression. And I went on medication, and I started having treatment for that. And then we found my mum dead in bed, and I just went whoosh downhill. And that was possibly one of the worst periods. I've had some dreadful periods since then, and with the depression, but that is something that I live in fear of coming back, because only someone who's ever had depression could ever know just how bad it is. Again, my husband was really supportive, my family were great, and I had a really good GP at the time. And I did different therapy things, and I started to improve, and I decided, even now, if I get it, I have to be busy. I have to be around people. And I started to volunteer in the school, and that's where it came from. And my first ever, before I got into community work, I actually volunteered at this Mudchute, and that was many, many, many years ago. I ran a play scheme here, and I got into this type of work. I worked in the school, as in the schools, and I worked with children who had difficult behaviour, etc. But when I came in the voluntary work, and as I say, I did a bit of voluntary work here, and then it was from there that there was a brilliant community project that worked specifically with women. It was run by the Methodist Church, and they employed me there, and it was such a good project. It was nothing about targets, meeting numbers. If a woman came in who needed support, if you spent months giving her support, you know, they realised that if you made a difference in one person's life, you know, it was a success.
Yeah, good enough.
And that was at the time when the Bangladeshi families first started to come over here. And what's going on now with the so-called illegal immigrants, that was, the Bangladeshis had it much the same. There was places here that were no-go areas, and you look back, and I've always said, as you know, as I've got older, and it's until you get to know people. And you know, I'll admit that when I first started work, I did stereotypical. I'd been brought up in the East End, that's where education played a big part with me, and knowledge, and I started to question things, you know, and it was when I worked with the Bangladeshi women, I went back to my childhood and my mum. It was their lives, their community was exactly like I was growing up. My mum would say, go and ask Mrs. Ariane to lend me a bottle of milk, go and ask Miss Ariane to lend me a pound till the old man gets paid. That's how we grew up, and it was the community spirit. You couldn't go into one of their houses without having something to eat, you know, and they all cared for one another, and you know, it was so, that was a really lovely project. We had a couple of really nasty cases that I worked with there, you know, and it was much the domestic violence, and much like years ago here, the women didn't count for nothing, so the men could just get away with it. And then I got offer of a job, a youth project, to run a youth project, and I really have always liked working with young people, and I took that on, and I worked for local authority, and I worked for them for a few years, and it was when we had about the 10th restructuring, and they did a mission statement, and young people was about 10 down the list. I thought, I don't want to be here no more. It's all about bums on seats and that. And opportunity came up, I left. I went to a community project round the road to work, and that was really wasn't inclusive. I was running, and this was 20 odd years ago, if you run a scheme, if your parents could pay £40, you could come in, and the kids off the estate were sitting on the doorstep, couldn't come in. Didn't last there long, and I was asked to help out with an interview on the Mudchute. There was about 3 full-time members of staff here at the time, and they were looking for an environmental worker. And I came over and they didn't have a clue, and the people who was interviewing didn't have a clue about the community, about the young people. And we didn't appoint, and then I was asked, would I be interested? So I went along as a volunteer with them, and that's how I started this work. But we struggled so much, and it was the family that, you know, that got us through.